cocoa cores, peat moss, perlite, and vermiculite. If you were to Google what to put in a raised planter, chances are you're going to see those mentioned. However, in many circumstances over the long haul, that could lead to a toxic environment for your gardening plants. In this video, I'm going to show you what you should be putting in your raised gardens, and also it's for a fraction of the price. Hi, my name is Dr. Tom Warren, and you're watching The Plant Doctor. Let's get started. Whether you're mixing the ingredients that I just mentioned, or you're going to the big box stores to buy your own potting soil, technically what you're buying is not soil. We refer to this as a soilless substrate or a soilless media. These mixes are designed for pots and are to be used on the short-term basis. And they are great for what they do. However, if we have raised beds and we're using soil in there for years and years, we need something more substantial. The ingredients of these mixes are going to be organic, meaning that they're derived from natural, previously living products, and anything that's living and has passed away is going to decompose. Now, the decomposition process is actually beneficial for plants for a short period of time. It releases nutrients into the soil for our plants. However, over time, these mixes tend to break down into an anaerobic slop, not allowing for proper aeration or drainage in your soils. Another reason we use soilless media is because of its bulk density. Native soil is very, very dense and becomes very heavy relative to its volume as compared to potting mixes. For example, here to my left, if this pot was full of native soil, I probably couldn't even lift it. But this is a mix of pine bark and peat moss and vermiculite and sand in this pot growing this Japanese maple. It makes it much lighter and much easier to pick up and move around. So while potting mixes are initially very easy to work with, they have nice, light, airy soil, lots of aeration, makes it easy to plant in, makes it easy for the roots to grow deep. Over time, those organic components, your cocoa core, your peat moss, and sometimes even pine bark in these products are going to break down and become a sloppy mush. And that becomes a problem for raised planters after they've been in the ground for, say, a year or more. So within 2 to 4 years, we are left with a situation to where we need to replace all of the soilless media, all of that potting mix that we've put into this raised bed, pull it out and start over again. This can be very labor intensive and also very expensive. For long-term success of our raised garden beds, we want to use actual garden soil, not soilless media, not soilless substrate. And so that brings us to the question, what is good garden soil? Good garden soil is going to be a mixture of 50% topsoil and 50% compost. Now, there's a couple of ways we can go about purchasing or procuring topsoil and compost. The easiest way to go about this is simply Google topsoil near me, compost near me, and you're going to see several providers of topsoil and compost that are in your area. And usually these places will have services where they'll deliver it to your house, or if you have a truck, you can take your truck there and bulk purchase it. But if you do not have a truck, or you don't have a lot of area, say you've only got 1 or 2 raised beds like me, one thing you can do is actually buy this by the bag. And so when you purchase this, you're going to mix it at a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you're buying 20 bags of topsoil, you'll buy 20 bags of compost, mix it up homogeneously, and then put it in your raised bed. If you're buying this in bulk, if you're going to pick this up by the scoop in a truck, or if you're having it delivered, before you purchase it, I want you to go and look at the compost, look at the topsoil, make sure it's of quality components. Make sure the compost is broken down. What we don't want to see is sticks and leaves in our compost. We want it already broken down. Also, something to look for, if there's a backhoe where they're working on these compost piles, one thing I want you to look for is copious amounts of steam coming off of the pile. If you see a lot of steam coming off the pile, that's a potential indicator that you don't want that compost quite yet. It's going through what we call going through the heat. It is actively decomposing, and the internal temperatures of that pile can get close to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So stay away from that. It's a little too hot. You put that in your raised garden bed along with some soil, you're going to run into some potential issues. Real topsoil is going to be made of 3 components: sand, silts, and clays. Sands and clays are inorganic, meaning they're not broken down by decomposition. This is going to provide long-term structure for the soil that's in our garden bed. So unlike using peat moss, cocoa cores, and a bunch of organic matter in our raised beds, the sand and silt is going to provide much more stability to our soil layer, so we're not constantly having to introduce new materials into the topsoil. To give you a cost analysis of filling your raised garden bed with 50% topsoil, 50% compost versus a potting soil or soilless media, the cost comparison is off the charts. Here locally, I get lucky. I can get compost for free. The local city, municipalities, they collect leaves in the fall and winter. They let them decompose. Here late winter, early spring, they'll let you take your truck and pick up truckloads for free. And that's what I use here. But locally, you may not have that. You can pick up a cubic yard of compost for roughly $20 or $30. You can also pick up a cubic yard of topsoil for about the same amount. So it takes about almost 2 cubic yards to fill this up. So I've got roughly a yard of compost, roughly a yard of topsoil in here, and I filled this up for, I believe, $25. 1 bag of potting mix at my local big box store cost $15, and it takes almost 20 bags to fill this up. So you can do the math on that. Almost $300 in potting mix to fill up this raised garden bed versus $30 to fill it up. Literally better soil, and you're going to have better long-term results and better long-lasting soils by using a 50-50 ratio of topsoil and compost. I want to be abundantly clear about using 50% topsoil and 50% compost in your raised garden beds. Now, every year you will need to add a little bit of additional compost to your topsoil in your bed. You can see here in the corner, there's 2 or 3 inches where it's sagged down. Over on the other corner, we see the same thing as well. That is because with a good garden soil, you still have some decomposition going on. That the organic layer that we put in the compost is still decomposing over time. It's just not going to completely collapse on you to the point to where it's anaerobic. The sands and the clays that we have incorporated into this raised garden bed are giving us enough aeration so that long term, this will last years and years and years. We simply need to come in late winter, early spring, and add a little bit more compost, incorporate that into the soil mix, and we will be good for decades to come. And you may be asking yourself, well, can I just plant in my own native soil in the backyard, or just dig up a bunch of soil and put it in my raised garden bed? Maybe, it depends. Most modern neighborhoods are just leveled. So if you've got a high spot in the neighborhood and a low spot, they take the high spot and push it over to the low spot. And so one lot may have lots of good topsoil while the next lot is down to bedrock. There's a couple things you can do to see if this is viable for you. One, send off a soil test to your local extension service. So if you just Google your state, if you're in the United States, and so for example, if you live in South Carolina and you type in extension service, Clemson's going to pop up. You can send them a soil sample and they can tell you all about your soil. If you live in Kansas State will do the same thing. Start there, and if your soil chemistry is okay, look at your soil textures. Is it heavy clay? Is it heavy sands? If so, it may not be good soil for you. For most homeowners, their best option is to purchase topsoil, to purchase compost, or find a garden center that already has this pre-mixed for them, and then put it in a raised garden bed. It's much more economical. You're going to have way less headache going that route as well. Hopefully now you understand the difference between a potting mix and true topsoil. Potting mixes definitely have their place in the landscape and garden. Short-term, annual plants, small pots, that's great. Larger areas like raised gardens, you'll want to use a topsoil. Using a blend of compost and topsoil in your raised garden bed is not only going to be long-term benefit for your plants, it's also going to be long-term benefit for your wallet as well. The forsythias are starting to bloom here for me, and that's my sign to get busy in the garden and landscape. I hope this quick video has helped you here in the late winter make educated decisions about what you're going to do with your raised garden beds going into the spring season. Guys, as always, thank you for watching The Plant Doctor, and until next time, happy gardening.